Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Matty B. And I'm just going to hop right into it. What a crazy, crazy end to the regular season. Only if you're a Steelers fan. And possibly a Chargers fan for the disappointment. But the Steelers go to overtime. And I think, oh great, here they are. They're going to tie the game, which would eliminate them from the playoffs. After they already tied the Lions game. If they beat the Lions, it wouldn't even have mattered at all.
No.
So I thought, this is fitting. Ben's career is going to end just how the past 6 years have gone, of kind of just like mediocre disappointment, and the media and like Steelers fans pointing out that Mike Tomlin has never had a losing record. Like, awesome. You know, cool. Great work, guys. Still hasn't had that losing record. And I'm like, it's his last year. Like, go for the win. And lo and behold, I'm not home. So I'm trying to like just follow the game, whatever, trying to watch it. The television down here in North Carolina, if you're watching over the air, because the game was on CBS, I think. So you're watching it, and they turned to the Carolina Panthers game. They're playing, of course, like the Bucs, right? I think. Yeah. I tried to black it out, but I'm like, they're like, hey, we have this awesome game that's going to decide the playoffs. Basically, this game literally decides the playoffs. And we're going to go ahead and show you this Carolina Panthers mauling by Tom Brady as he goes for the MVP trophy. And it's like, all right, what are you doing? At least give me a picture-in-picture. Like, that's why people don't care about the NFL. I mean, give the NBA credit. I don't remember the NBA ever doing that. I don't really watch the NBA anymore, just because the regular season has become so watered down in the NBA with their super teams. They're like, now teams like 3 through the rest of the league in each division don't matter in the NBA. Like, if you're not one of the top teams, you're garbage. Even the Celtics like made it to the finals a couple years ago in the Eastern Conference. They weren't even close to winning a championship against the stacked teams. So it's like, all right, cool. The NFL, they're trying to make it more spread out by increasing the team participation here. I don't know how much better it is. I have the same feeling that I have for college football. I don't think the bye week is a positive. You know? Like, the Packers get a bye week, great. Would I rather see Aaron Rodgers come out and keep things going? I mean, they've been playing lights out. He already rested against the Lions. Yeah, I want to see that happen. I want to see them continue to strike it rich. But now they're going to have 1 week where he's rested against the Lions, then a week off. And you're expecting him to kick into high gear. It's not going to happen. That's why, if for college football, we're going to get into it later in the show because they decided not to really expand right now. It's like, why are you giving these teams a bye? In the NFL, it shows you that like the buys don't work. I'm just bringing that up because I don't think the Steelers are completely out of it. Ben has won a Super Bowl as a wild card. The NFL, it's week by week now. I'm not saying they have a great chance. I would say maybe 2%, 1%. It's not 0%. It's not a high percentage, but I think it's enough where if you watch the Ravens game, and the Ravens weren't a playoff team. I mean, if they would have won, possibly they could have snuck in. But the Steelers, they didn't show me anything that I watched that game, and they're playing the Chiefs now, and I'm like, you know what? They have a great shot. Awesome shot. But before we get into the predictions and stuff, what were your thoughts watching the game this week?
It was just kind of like dragging the old dead leg. Like, I thought it was interesting to see how much hype they had for TJ Watt breaking the sack record from Strahan. And
Matt, the records, I'm going to cut you off. So dumb. They added another regular season game. It's same with college football. It's like, hey, these guys are breaking all these records. They're playing 3 more games. What are you talking about?
But he also had all of his groin injuries, so he didn't play in 2 of them or had COVID. Like, when you look at the total number of games played, plus when Strahan broke the record, like, Favre just threw himself on the ground.
Oh my gosh, you're bringing that up. Favre was the warrior, Matt. I think he just slipped a little bit, kind of helped him.
Shut your mouth.
What are you talking about?
He gets up like hugging him. Like clearly he gave it up. He could have just handed the ball off.
He's on Good Morning America. You think a guy would get that gig if they weren't honest?
I 100% think that would qualify him for being a lying turd.
How dare you? Michael Strahan, people love him.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that he's... All I'm saying is...
We're not even 5 minutes in and you're destroyed the show with your Michael Strahan hate, Matt. He doesn't even play anymore.
Well, you know what? And fine. Then I hate the Giants too because
I hate the Giants. The only person I like from the Giants is Eli Manning. And how BS?
That's a stupid reason too.
No, how BS is like the NFL. Did you see like they were like tweeting stuff about like see you in Canton, Ben? Unless like someone doctored that. I'm like, what? Why are you immediately putting him in? But my man Eli Manning, they were kind of like, yeah, man, Eli. Psh. Like, the end of his career versus the end of Ben's career, not really much difference. 2 Super Bowl championships. I think the NFL passing records all time, they're around each other. I mean, of course, Ben played more seasons, right?
I would say yes.
I'm going to probably get destroyed, and then now people will be hating on me. They're like, why are you even bringing up Eli Manning whenever you're going through the list? Ben's what, 5th? Eli's 9th. So it's not like, all right, oh yeah, Eli, he really sucks. It's like, oh, they started the same year. Ben played 2 more years. He has like, what, 6,000 more yards passing? I don't know if they added this year in yet.
Is that it?
Well, if he throws 3,000 a year, that's 2 extra seasons. It basically lines up, right?
Yeah, that's still a shit pile of yards.
It's just 2 more years he played. Oh my gosh, it's perfect math. So if I'm looking at that, it's like, all right, you're going to congratulate Ben, but in terms of like awards, they kind of did the same thing. They had Super Bowls early, basically flamed out. Ben's been like half hurt and stuff. Nothing against him. I mean, he's clearly emotional this year. But like, how much would you be surprised if the Steelers like win a game or 2, and then Ben's like, maybe I'm not going to retire? That's like, oh my God.
Well, I told you last week it would be awesome if he just didn't. It was like, hey guys, I was just feeling a little bit tired from the end of the season. Tired of carrying you guys. I'm rested though.
Well, you were right. He does look frustrated on the field. It's like, oh my gosh, like I don't even know that they have any real chance coming in. They're playing the Chiefs, and I circle back around to the Chargers game at the end. The Raiders need to win. If the Raiders tie the Chargers, I believe they would have played the Chiefs. Their coaches knew that, and so they said that they were going to go for the win. It was in overtime. They had their chances. The Chargers went for it like on their own 20. It was like, what are you doing? Are you trying to lose this game? And the Raiders weren't taking advantage, and so there's like, what, a minute left? The Raiders are just running the ball, and I thought they're going to tie this game. And Ben, after just having that emotional win to where he thinks makes the playoffs, they're going to have this BS run the clock out. The Chargers then decide, no, we're going to call timeout. Why would we let them run the clock out? Why would we let them run the ball 3 times up the middle and kick a 60-yard field goal? Because that's how long it would have been. I think the ESPN stat guy said that it would have been a 63-yard field goal had they let them just do that last run. Some people said that the Chargers didn't have enough men on the field, but if you look at the all-22, they definitely did. They had already stopped them twice, so it was 3rd down. Maybe they thought they were going to pass it or something, but at that point, I think you just let them go. They're running the clock out, and the Raiders still came out and ran the ball again. They got the 1st down. I mean, maybe the Chargers could have stopped them and set up that long field goal, but I thought, like, why call the timeout? Even if they punt it, you're not getting your return. You're not getting a block. Like, wait till you stop them and then call the timeout. If they're going to run the clock all the way down and run one more play, I don't even know what they were doing, but I would have just kind of let it go. Maybe they were thinking like, hey, this is too suspicious, man. We got to call timeout so they don't think we're trying to end in a tie. And maybe the coaches were like giving each other head nods or something. I don't know. But I thought that was one of the dumbest coaching moves I've seen, where they need a guy like me on the sideline that just tells them, yo, don't call timeout. I think they're trying to just end the game. Let them run it out. We make the playoffs. Like, they had to know they would have made the playoffs. That's all I'm saying. So maybe they got a little bit scared. I don't know. I don't understand why you would say in that scenario, we've looked like garbage the last couple minutes of this game. Haven't been able to do anything. Yeah, let's try to block a punt. Perfect. Or a field goal. Because, like, they weren't even in punt range. So I don't understand why you would... They were going to kick the field goal no matter what, because I don't think they wanted to play the Chiefs. But I think they were content with just saying, hey, we tried to win. We just didn't get it. Now we have to play the Chiefs again. You know, like, we tried. We kicked that 60-yard field goal that was 10 yards short. But it just really didn't work out for us. Where the Chargers, on the other hand, they were, like, panicking. Like, they're going to run the clock out. We need to get the ball back somehow. And we haven't been able to move the ball, but we're going to score in 1 second left. I don't get it. But it worked out. Because now Ben has another chance. Maybe they didn't want Ben to end his career on a win. You know, because that would have been like a win. They would have been playoff caliber over 500, you know, just didn't get in because of the weird tie. People would have had their conspiracies flying around. But I look at it and I'm like, what a crazy finish. And I'm not even disappointed. Like, I don't even know. I stayed up for the game. I had people tell me, hey, do you think that game was rigged? I stayed up to watch it. People were falling asleep. Even Mike Tomlin said he's falling asleep. Hey, what happened? I heard there was controversy. I mean, I was texting. People were like, what do you mean by that? I'm like, what do I mean? He called timeout. He gave them an extra chance. Even if they didn't get the run and the first down, they didn't think they could have. It would have been 4th and short. They could have ran one more time and tried to punch it in that way. And so, like, yeah, we thought we would have got the first down. Like, they basically handed the Raiders 15 excuses if they didn't win. Meanwhile, the Chargers coach is kind of like, I don't know. Did you see the end of that? What are your thoughts?
The analytics.
Is that what he said?
No, but I'm sure that probably...
He pulled out his 2-point conversion card. It's like 30... What was that, coach? Was it... It wasn't Harbaugh, was it? No, it was like... someone had they're up 30 points. Wasn't it like Brett Bielema or someone? They went for 2, and they're like, the card said it! Card said go for 2. What are you talking about? Who cares if we're up 30? I know it was in the Big Ten. I'm pretty sure. It could be. It's probably someone. It was probably like Brady Hoke or someone. People were going to yell at me, but whatever.
But I did see it, and I thought it was bizarre because it was like it almost felt like, are we going to get in trouble if we just run this out and keep Pittsburgh out of the playoffs and let it go to a tie? Like that was kind of the feeling that I got. It was like both teams had opportunities to end it, and they were like, I don't know, should we end it? Should we just go to the playoffs? Just leave it as is?
I just think that the Raiders were they wanted to win. They were afraid they were going to make a mistake. The Chargers had no idea what was going on, and they blew it. I don't think there was a grand conspiracy. I think that the Raiders were kind of content, like I said. They were looking for that excuse, because that coach, he's going to be fired no matter what, right? Unless they win and go deep in the playoffs. So he was like, I think his main goal was kind of like, do whatever I do, just don't blow it, and then I won't get fired this week. You know? We'll talk about it later in the show, because like they were one of the ones that were rumored to go after Jim Harbaugh. But I have that on the board already. So we'll get into that in a little bit. But that was what I think his mindset was, because it kind of showed him and their other coaches on the sideline, like just like kind of talking it out. And I think they were like, hey, just don't blow it, because then we're fired. And who knows where we're going to end up. So if we keep this going, maybe they will just hire us, because we had basically a dead season. And now you're in the playoffs, and I have the matchups here. What was their matchup? It's something favorable, I think, kind of. They play the Bengals. 10-7, both teams. I know it's on the road, but I don't think that's an automatic loss, you know? The Bengals were hot and cold this year. Second-year quarterback. But is it going to be somewhere where you're able to go in and be intimidated? Maybe, but I don't think so. I think the Raiders have a good shot in that game. So I think that was their mindset. They didn't really want to play the Chiefs, because if you're trying to coach for your job, the Chiefs, I mean, it's harder for the ownership to look at the Raiders if they make it 2 or 3 rounds into the playoffs and say, yeah, we got to fire you. You know? Everyone's already congratulating on them on just making the playoffs, so maybe he doesn't get fired now at all. I don't know. I just think it's a lot tougher to not promote him if the players like him and they make a run in the playoffs, even if it's only one game, and they're competitive in the next. You never know with these games. But
what if John Gruden just shows up in the playoffs and he's just like, hey, I'm allowed to still be here while the NFL is conducting, while my lawsuit's going on. Just coach them through the playoffs.
I mean, I don't think they would ever try to do that. I mean, I'm still thrown because I keep seeing football team now. Remember I said that I was playing Madden and I saw football team and I was confused as hell. I saw people were giving football gambling lines on the football team, focus on the football team. I'm like, what are you talking about? It makes zero sense. And then I'm like, oh, wait, they're just showing how you'd bet on Washington. So I can't wait for them to just reveal their name. I wish they would have just come out and said, like, hey, you got us. We screwed up. It is the Admirals. We're just going to tell you now. Like, we're not going to wait a month and try to fix it.
But that's almost the best thing, because when you look at their stadium's falling apart. Alex Smith's leg falling apart. Like, there's like 100 people that have been injured on that field. Like, of course, why would they be able to successfully announce a change in their team name? They could even unchange the Redskins. They could just have the football team for 2 years.
They could have just been the Pigskins. But I think it was too close and they were worried that people would like whatever. But that's the best name.
They could have been anything. They could have been Wet Farts.
No, they couldn't be the Red Wolves. They said it's too much of a hassle for them. So I don't know. Anything else you have on this past week's games? Those are the only two I really wanted to bring up.
I mean, those were the two that mattered.
Yeah, so let's get into the wild card weekend because I'm kind of excited for this. I was letting my buddy know, like, I still have 4 teams alive, Matt. You know, when you have so many favorite teams, it makes for a nice weekend to just, watch some games. But I do want to just take a moment to say the league and the officiating was so great this past week. Everything was top notch, Matt. I mean, the NFL is just a blast to be a part of as an owner, What are you laughing at?
I'm waiting for that day where the commission gives you a $500,000 fine. You're like, shit, he owns my house now.
Well, as owner of the Packers, I think we have a great chance, Matt, to go far in the playoffs. I was going through the rest of the thing because, like the Packers have their stock sale going on. And you can also buy World Championship shares for the Atlanta Braves, which, of course, I own too, because, like, why not? Why would you not own your favorite teams? Because it gives you a little bit more skin in the game, right? The Braves lose. There's a lockout. So if you're interested, there might be a lockout for Major League Baseball. So those shares will average down. And you can just own a piece of the Braves and become part of America's team.
I think your pity party, unlocked a vortex of Georgia superpower.
My pity party? For what, the Braves?
Yes. You're like, oh, my team suck. And then the Braves win. Georgia wins.
I don't care about Georgia. The Braves needed to win because, anyone can own them. You could own the Braves, Matt, and just say, you know what, I don't care for the Cardinals. Like, if you're a Pirates fan, because I know a lot of Pirates fans listen to the games, you can just be tired of Bob Nutting not paying for anything and just buy a couple shares of the Braves. I think they're like $25, man. Throw a couple bucks in and say, you know what, I want a team that actually is going to win. And I bring it up because I think there were rumors that the Denver Broncos, and I know we have some Broncos fans that listen to the show, that the Broncos fans might go the Braves route and let it be owned by an investment firm type thing where you can go ahead, buy your shares, and then they vote on the board or the owner or whatever. So it's still owned, but it's owned by the firm or whatever. Now, is one better than the other? Because you have the Packers share, theirs is an old school model from 1917 or however long that stock thing was set up. They're the only ones that's publicly owned, But if more sports go that way, I wonder how many teams are going to be more open to moving, right? Because you have the Raiders. They moved to Las Vegas, and the reason I brought it up, The Rams. Did you see the Rams complaining about not having fans in their stadium last weekend?
No.
So they lose to the 49ers. A lot of the 49ers, one of my teams, Matt, 49ers growing up, they had Steve Young, my man. The 49ers filled up their stadium, and the Rams were like, yeah, it kind of shocked us that we didn't have home field advantage at home. It's like, you move around so many times, no one cares. You don't have fans. If you move so many times, you don't have home field advantage. You just don't. Same with like the Raiders. They move to Las Vegas. How many people from like Steelers fans will be sitting there and, you know what? Let's go to Vegas for a weekend, watch the Steelers beat the Raiders, and then we go ahead and, go to some casinos. So like if you're picking bad areas to move into, don't be surprised that you don't have any fans left, Right?
Fair enough.
Rams fans, maybe in the Midwest, St. Louis. Now they're back in L.A., where they already failed the first time, right? They failed. They moved. They moved back. Failing again. So I wonder just how many other, like if the Broncos, I don't think the Broncos would move out of Denver. But like you need to get some of these like ownerships to approve. And it's the wild, wild west. I hear people saying like, well, yeah, the so-and-so, the NFL, everything's like set in stone. It's like the Redskins are in the middle of changing their name right now. In 10 years, it might look totally different. You don't know. So I'm just enjoying it, I haven't spoke with Goodell yet, so I don't know what kind of role I'll be playing in the league, Matt. Maybe I can give some advice on clock management. But that might be a perceived advantage, having so many owners for the Packers. That might be unfair if the league said that in one of the notices I read. That they can't have other owners donating more money because that might be an unfair advantage compared to other teams that only have one. But let's get into the wild card games as my voice throws up. Raiders and Bengals. We already talked about them. Who do you have in that first game?
Raiders.
I think they're playing for their life. I kind of like Joe Burrow. I think they're too inconsistent, but they are at home. And since you're going Raiders, I'll go Bengals. We'll see how that game goes. But I just have a feeling the Raiders are going to win, and they're going to kind of win a couple games. I don't know how the matchups go the second round. Because who got the bye? Tennessee, right?
Yeah.
So even if they're the low seed going through, I don't think Tennessee's that intimidating. I'm surprised they even got the bye.
But I think they've been on and off with having Julio hurt and with having Henry hurt.
Not even Julio hurt. When Julio's been back, he just looked like garbage in their offense. Like I think he might be past his prime, man. It's like watching Le'Veon Bell, where everyone's like, "Oh yeah, that's Julio doing his thing." It's a 5-yard hitch. I'm like, that's his thing now? Like, I'm not even joking. I watched
there's this thing limping on the sideline.
You laugh, but I watched a game, and that's exactly what happened. That's how I knew that ready to bring up. Like, he ran a hook, and they're like, yeah, there's Julio back doing his thing. And I'm like, what's he doing?
There he is, just casually smoking a cigarette on the sideline.
They're like, he's going to start clicking here soon. I'm like, it's week 14. Like, it was late in the season. I don't know how many weeks there are this year. So I watched that, and I'm like, man, you got to get the guy some help. But at some point, it's like, all right, yeah, you've kind of lost it. Like, when Larry Fitzgerald started to lose it, he wasn't hyped up as like, oh, yeah, he's going to be electrifying. It's kind of like, and there's Larry Fitzgerald still playing the fourth wide receiver slot, where if he gets open, he might be able to make some runs or whatever. So I don't know. That's what I'm like. Julio, you might be at that age. You might just be at that point. And Tennessee, you're getting Derrick Henry back. Derrick Henry should have been back. Like, his timeline was like 4 weeks, Matt, 4 to 6 weeks. And yet they sat him the rest of the year. I think that's a mistake. But we'll save that for next week, because I think he's going to be out of shape. Patriots at the Bills. I picked the Bills preseason as my Super Bowl team. They haven't looked as consistent. I'm going to stick with them. The Patriots are better than I thought this year. because of course I had to stick up for my man Tom Brady and talk a lot of trash on Belichick. He's barely like a 500 coach without him. Like, or he might even be under 500. Who knows? I haven't looked at the stats for a while. They went 10-7 this year. I just don't think you're going to be able to beat them running or passing the ball 3 times this time. You're on the road. I think the Bills got it. What do you think?
Yeah, I gotta agree with you. I mean, I think the game where they only threw the ball like 2 or 3 times was a fluke, and if I was Buffalo, I would be pissed off going into that and be looking for revenge.
Getting into the Sunday games, you got my man Tom Brady. So the first of my 4 teams, I'm sticking with them. They're playing the Eagles. Everyone knows I hate the Eagles. And it would be fitting for the Eagles to knock Tom Brady out of like a what? What just happened? But I honestly thought Aaron Rodgers was a lock for MVP. And I looked at the stats now. Tom Brady passed him up late in the season. I didn't even think Tom Brady was having a good year because Mike Evans has been hurt. Godwin's out. Antonio Brown eliminated himself, which, let me just throw this in. Antonio Brown, he hurt his ankle, Matt. So he didn't want to go back in the game because he was hurt. But as soon as they told him no, he took his shirt off and hopped around in the end zone, jumping. I don't know if he was stretching the ankle out, seeing if he can get back in the game, or I don't know what that was supposed to be about, right?
I'm glad that you brought that up because that was one of the things of irony that I had. Like, he posted his rebuttal to what happened
days later,
and it not only was it days later, but if he truly penned it himself, I would be impressed.
Well, I can't comment on player issues.
Just because I just don't see, like, for as sporadic as his behavior is, I just don't see him sitting down with quill and ink and penning such wonderful, like, well thought of words. Because he's hit a couple different interviews and just railed about stuff. And
well, I think he knows that it's done. You're on a Super Bowl team. You finally get the Super Bowl ring that, like, my man T.O. never got, and that's how you act? Like, could you imagine if when T.O. was playing his balls out in the Super Bowl, when McNabb blew it, and everyone was like, man, T.O. played awesome. He should have been MVP. And the next year, like, let's say they won it on the strength of him, because Antonio Brown had a great playoffs last year. Like, let's say they're like, oh, next year, T.O.'s, like, ripping his shirt off, doing crunches or like doing something crazy, leaving the field. People would have been like, what are you doing? Like, you finally got validation for your entire career, and then you're just going to leave, and then everyone's like, oh yeah, teams are going to be lined up to get him. It's like, who? What teams? What are you talking about? Who would take a shot at him? Like, the playoff teams, I'm looking around, it's like, there's not one playoff team where I think, like, hey, you know what they really need? A head case to ruin their locker room, you know? Tom Brady was like the guy that controlled everything. He was your best shot. You said he was your best friend. Is that how you treat your best friends? Like, if it was your ankle, be at the trainer, you know? Why are you just sitting there?
Be in the pop-up porta potty.
Yeah, if you're Mike Evans was in that thing whenever he had his concussion or whatever, that he miraculously turned into a groin injury or whatever. And I'm like, he went in all woozy from hitting his head, and that he came out limping. I'm like, what the heck? What do they do in that tent? But I'm like, all right, Tom Brady, he should be MVP because look at what he has to deal with. I'm just like, wow. I'm surprised that it's even a debate at this point. But I'm going with them. Did I get your pick? Eagles, Buccaneers.
I'm gonna go Eagles.
Why? Because their guy ended up catching a bunch of people falling out of the Redskins stadium?
Because I think Gardner Minshew is the real deal. And he's going to have a chance to let the mullet fly. He played a lot. He's 2-0 as the starter.
Yeah, but I thought that was just because it was like the end of the year or whatever.
Well, I think
Isn't Hurts hurt? I thought he was coming back.
We don't know.
Hurt. So I thought the Eagles had clinched because the NFC was so bad. So they had clinched. I thought that they X'd them out like they were eliminated the 1 week.
I think you're right.
So I thought they had clinched, and so Minshew's just been playing to let the other guy heal up.
Well, he has, but he's also been playing so well that it's like if they find themselves in a tough spot, they could spot pinch him in, and almost like your boy Tebow magic, and catch lightning in a bottle.
Well, that's all they need is one, but I mean, it would be fitting for the Bucs to lose to them again. They always lose to Tom Brady always loses to the same teams. Giants, for some reason, they lost to the Eagles at one time. So if they lose to them again, I'd be like, you got to be kidding me. But I honestly think Tom Brady's going to take a run, and they're going to be back in the Super Bowl. And at this point, I mean, if he wins another Super Bowl, I just think he should retire, right?
Well, I
go out like John Elway. I mean, people aren't expecting it because he keeps saying he wants to play till he's 45. But that's so special that you could be like, yeah, it wasn't just a one-year fluke, boys. I'm out here winning back-to-back Super Bowls with the Bucs, and if they would beat the Patriots, you know how crazy that would be, right?
I mean, I think in that situation, I think he definitely leaves on that note, because then there's no way that anyone could get one up on him.
So, that's my feeling.
But I thought of it with the Antonio Brown situation. If take him quitting out of the equation, and if he continues to play out the rest of the year in Tampa, even the next couple years in Tampa, the disaster of him leaving Pittsburgh, going to the Raiders, going to New England, just being all over the place, I think that would almost be forgiven, and he would have been able to find a way to politic his way into the Hall of Fame. I mean, at this point, I think he kind of just I don't know that he will ever get in at this point.
Well, I mean, Hall of Fames, I hate them because and that's across all sports. Just going back to Barry Bonds, I know I bring it up all the time, but it's what's the point? Dudes are just random dudes are picking Hall of Famers, and that's why when they talk about Ben Roethlisberger, yeah, I think he should be in the Hall of Fame. But it's on what basis, though, can you compare him against a guy like Eli Manning that's top 10 in the history of the league in passing? And I know there are a couple other guys like Matt Ryan that are up there without the Super Bowl wins. It's he still has 2 Super Bowl wins, and he beat the greatest ever twice to do it. At what point do you're oh, yeah, never mind, it was just the team. His teams were so great. When meanwhile the Giants organization is a mess, and it's all right, well, yeah, they're really winning since he's left. They've been caught garbage, and they might be garbage for another 10 years. So give the guy credit. That's all I'm saying. He's on the Manning cast. If you don't know him, Eli Manning. Anything else you got on that game?
No.
Let's get into the next one. 49ers at Cowboys. Now, I joke about the 49ers being my team. I just despise their ownership after how they treated Harbaugh. And then I still saw someone over the weekend, they were saying how Jim Harbaugh might come back to the NFL and how it's going to be a disaster because of how Harbaugh leaks stuff to the press. I'm when? What is Harbaugh leaking to the press? They try to get quotes out of him at the Michigan game. He runs off the field. They don't even know what he's doing. They're making stuff up. He didn't leak anything with the 49ers. It was very clear that the 49ers ownership leaked stuff, had players do interviews about how negative it was, and then their team fell apart with the next coach. And they've had to rebuild, and they still haven't won. I know they went to the Super Bowl. Was it 2 years ago? And they end up losing to the Chiefs. They let the Chiefs get a Super Bowl. It's what are you doing? So they sneak into the playoffs by beating the Rams with a big crowd showing, which the 49ers have a lot of fans. You got to give them that, especially fans now that are around our age. They grew up in the golden era and even older because they had Joe Montana and then Steve Young. So a lot of their fans across the country, they're playing the Cowboys, which is a bit of a rivalry game going back to those 90 teams. I don't know what to think of the Cowboys, but I'm going to say for the show, I'm going with the Cowboys. I think they're going to win. I don't know how to feel about them, though. I just don't think the 49ers, I mean, their coach, he's known for blowing Super Bowls. So, that's your coach right there. I don't think they're gonna beat the Cowboys. What do you think?
I'm going with the Cowboys, but it's more out of admiration of Mike McCarthy's hustle on the Cowboys. Because he got the job because he's so into analytics.
Is that what he said?
Yeah, do you remember before, when he got fired from Green Bay, he was just hanging out with old retired coaches at his home, breaking down film and
I knew
claiming
he was
he was embracing analytics, but it's clear, he's not using any of that. It's 100% just I've brought up in the game and I'm not following any of it. So I tip my cap to him hustling the system. This is oh yeah, analytits.
I knew he was meeting with coaches, but I know he said he was doing analytics. I think everyone that watched the games would know that he wasn't doing that, but I don't know.
But then it was he's yeah. Jerry Jones was yeah, we hired him because he's really forward thinking with his analytics. And it's just no, he's not at all. Just randomly going for it on fourth down. Oh yeah, that's what the analytics say. No, you're not even close. You can't just say you're using it.
I brought up earlier in the show, some people have cards that tell them what to do. Maybe he has an analytics card that he filled out himself. Just saying, that's my analytics, baby. I'm going. And
just trust the math.
And if he wins, because he was the coach right when they won the Super Bowl, I think. I know we did a breakdown of years ago. They would, I think they would have a good shot at him being one of those recycled coaches that kind of just goes forever then. Where if you win the Super Bowl with two teams, I'm not saying the Cowboys are going to win the Super Bowl, because I don't think the NFC is as wide open as what people think. If I'm being honest, I think the Bucs will play the Packers in the championship again. That's how it was last year. I think we get a rematch. But you never know. I mean, the 49ers have some dynamic playmakers, but I just think the Cowboys at this point, it's been so long for them to make a run. They got to do it this year. They got to do it. You'll get the favorable matchup next week, I believe, although it depends on who wins the other games. But I don't think all the favorites are going to go through. Right now, I've picked them so far, but we'll see as we go on. Next game, our big game, the Steelers at the Chiefs. Of course, I hate to say it, I'm going with the Chiefs. I wish there was a better matchup, but the Steelers did it to themselves, man. They could have been in that 10-7 range with the other teams. Maybe they would have got to play the Bengals, or the Raiders. Instead, they're playing the Chiefs because they tied against the Lions. Although, the Chiefs have been so hot and cold, maybe something changes. But what do you think?
I want to see a way that they pull this win out, but I think it's going to be the Chiefs. And I my worry is that it's going to be because of Melvin Ingram playing defense for them. That's going to cause the Chiefs defense to make the plays to pull the win out, because they had him. And I thought in the early part of the year he was playing well, and then it didn't seem like he was getting the reps and he wanted out, which blows my mind that you let a player like that go. And Tom was like, well, he didn't want to be here. When did that ever be considered in player personnel moves?
I think they were trying to clean up the locker room, but you're all right. I think he made a big sack in one of their games that they needed to clinch, potentially home field advantage, which they ended up losing anyway to the Titans. But I will say I wouldn't be surprised if that happened. If the Steelers are somehow get around the Chiefs, I think the AFC is wide open at that point. So if you can get by them, you're basically playing, while Ben is the freshest, the best team in the AFC. I'm not saying on the road that they're going to get it done, but if they were, I think you could see some real excitement in Pittsburgh as you're looking around saying, hey, we already beat the best. I mean, Tennessee's not the best. I don't have that feeling that they are. I was torn on them in the Bills preseason, I think, but they haven't played that great this year. They both had like injuries and weird stuff happen. So I think the Steelers right now, they're looking at this game and saying, this can get us some run, get to the Super Bowl, and you never know what's going to happen. So I just don't think that they have it. But who knows? The Chiefs have been kind of hit or miss on offense. And they've had players out. Is Kelsey out? Did he get hurt?
He's missed time.
I don't know if that was COVID related or not, though. Let's take a look and see. He does have an injury 3 days ago. So it says all right after he's all right after visiting with trainers. I don't know what that means. All right is in quotes. That's what Andy Reid said. So I don't know if he's back playing. I think he's all right. But that would be a key. If he's out, the Steelers got to get some offense, though, man. They're dink and dunk. It's painful to watch. And Najee Harris, talk about him getting hurt because he's been playing the most of like any player in the NFL at running back by a large margin. It's like leave it to Ben's last year to ruin the future. Right? Like, yeah, we got this stud. Let's destroy him in one season. It's like perfect plan. It's like they're Le'Veon Belling him early, and then 1 year they'll kind of trade him, or maybe they won't trade him. Maybe they'll have another holdout and he'll just leave again. And you're like, dang, we should have got rid of that guy before everyone knew that he was done. But one last game, Cardinals at the Rams. I think I've picked all favorites, right? I don't even know. Maybe I'm making some bad choices here. The Cardinals, though, I don't trust. I don't trust Stafford, though, either. Someone was like trying to show the clutch of drives he had, and none of them were like when the game was on the line. Like when the game's on the line, he always chokes. Going back to like the Lions years, and I'm like, all right, well maybe some of it's him. So as much as I hate to say it, I think I'm going to go with the Cardinals. What do you think for this game?
I've said from the get-go, I think the Cardinals were going to be a team to compete with or contend with. So I think that's going to be the team to beat coming out of the NFC.
And maybe that's how it shakes out. I just don't think they're consistent in the coaching. I think the coaching leaves a lot to be desired. And you kind of see flashes from them. But like in the playoffs, I don't think it matters. I don't think they make it far either way.
Well, I think the thing is, it drives 100% on the health of Hopkins. Because on the games that they've really struggled through the course of the season has been when Hopkins has been out. And he is a driving force in the offense that you can just chuck it up and he'll come down with it. But when he's not there, they can really load up the box and eliminate Connor. So,
which, let's give him credit, man. Everyone thought that he was like a bust and he was done. But, I mean, he's had a great year.
Yes, he has.
So, great for him. I know a lot of people were like, well, the Steelers are only keeping him because he had cancer. And it's like, now you look like an idiot. Like, I was ready for the Steelers to move on from him. I didn't think he really fit what they were trying to do. I thought he'd be more of like a second down back, kind of like the Saints used to use, or like the second power back type, where he wasn't like so much as a pass catcher like the Steelers were trying to get him to be. They were trying to like make him Le'Veon Bell, where I thought if he was in just a straight running game, he'd be better. But even in their system, I thought, well, that's probably not going to be a good fit either. But I mean, he's definitely played 100 times better than I thought. So it's great to see that happen. And now he can't be. People can't have pity parties for him. But I'm trying to see if Hopkins is back. But I was trying to say when he could return. So he could return for the wild card weekend if they played on a Sunday, which I think the game is a Sunday, right? Or no, it's a Monday night. So that means it gives him an extra day. But it doesn't say if he's back or not.
Yeah, they had him on the IR for a little bit.
Yeah, so they
said he could he could come back in possibility of the NFC Championship game.
Well, they're saying for the IR they could bring him out now, but I mean, if he's not there, so now they're saying it could be unrealistic for him to return before the championship game, like you're saying. But the one I was looking at was from today, so they were saying they could bring him back on Sunday, which would probably be the IR's earliest to bring him back. I don't think they're going to take him off though. If they haven't taken him off yet, and they play, I guess it's almost a week. I guess you have one more extra day, so maybe. But we'll find out later in the week. The show will be over by then. Anything else you have for the wild card predictions?
Not so much the wild card predictions, but NFL related. Cam Akers back in July tore his Achilles. They thought he was going to be out for the year, and he actually came off the IR with a torn Achilles and rushed 5 times and caught 3 passes in the overtime loss to the Niners. So, I mean, to rebound that quick from a major injury like that is something special.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that's where I'm kind of like, it's hard to follow. Some players can come back fast, and then you see Derrick Henry, and everyone's like, that's a clean injury. He'll be back before the end of the season, and then he never comes back. It's like, all right, well, how long is holding him out? Then you get the bye, so he doesn't even get any game reps at all. And that's why I think if the Steelers can get through the Chiefs, I don't think there's any team that's kind of like, oh, yeah, they're going to kill him. Like, they're going to kill the Steelers. It's kind of like, all right, well, maybe there can be some magic in Ben's last year. And then, of course, if he would end up winning the Super Bowl, which I'm telling you, like 2% chance, 1%, if that, he would have to retire like right there. Like, yo, I'm coming out like John Elway, baby. I'm done. This is such a magical moment.
The potential's always there, but it's like you have so many receivers dropping balls and putting them into these really bad situations where they're 3rd and 12, 3rd and 14. Like, like you're not going to fool anyone with what are you going to do? Like, they sit in coverage, and with 4 or 5 guys, they can drill Ben just standing there like a statue in the pocket. Like, you got to do something different. Get Ben into a more favorable situation.
Well, that's where, like, Juju's still out, right?
Yep.
And so that's where the loss of him, and I don't think he has any chance of coming back. I think that's where they really kill you. Where you're in the playoffs, you need a guy that, as much as I always rail on him, at least a little bit of a veteran type guy for Ben to go with. He has, like, no one. It's like, all right, who are you going to go with? Oh, he might drop it. Claypool, he might do something dumb. All right, he might be celebrating. Like, let's just get out there. And then instead, it's like, all right, Harris, you ready to touch the ball 48 times? All right. We'll see how long you last, man. Running backs only last like 3 years in the league anyway. And it just feels like if it wasn't Ben's last year, I think the offense would kind of look different, where they wouldn't just be trying to just grind things away. But you never know. They started undefeated last year. I think a lot of people are just kind of waiting for that. And if the receivers start to click, and it is playoff time, so you never know, maybe they get hot and go on a run. But Ben has to play. There were a couple throws, too, where I saw, and it's like, oh, man, you're short-arming it again? And I don't know, like, sometimes it looks like he just frustrated, like you said. Maybe he expected the receiver to be somewhere else, and he wasn't there. But, man, we'll see. It should be an exciting. I don't know how I feel about the wild card, though. I brought it up earlier in the show. I think I would like to see them get rid of the bye. I know the players don't want to be playing that extra game, so maybe it does give them incentive to, like, not sit out at the end of the year, even though, I mean, Aaron Rodgers still didn't have to play. So it doesn't really matter, I think, for all of the games. But it's hard for the NFL to get around that. Because I think if teams are already locked in and you didn't get that bye, why not rest 2 or 3 weeks at the end of the year? But who knows? We'll see how it goes. Anything else you have for the NFL?
No.
Kind of unrelated, kind of related. Michigan finished the AP poll final came out after the Georgia-Alabama game. Finished number 3rd overall, which since we've been doing the show, I think that's the highest either of our team has finished. I think Michigan's been in the top 10. You've had a rough couple years with Florida State since we've been doing this. But I bring it up because of how many NFL teams now. Last year, no one wanted him. Remember? Like he's like publicly like going for the Jets or whatever. And it's like, oh, maybe he's interested. And then they're like, yeah, probably not. And now it's like a week ago, after the Georgia game, you hear the same articles that they had penned up before the Ohio State game where it's like, oh, Harbaugh chokes every big game, forgetting that they beat Ohio State and finished number 3 overall, losing now, we know, to the national championship team by a similar margin that they beat Alabama by. So really not that. I mean, they went for it on 4th down, like I said early in the game, which I thought was idiotic. That kind of gave Georgia a cushion where if you don't do that, maybe you settle in, but that's just focusing on the past at this point. But with Harbaugh, it's like the media, they love to hate the guy, where one week they're like, garbage, complete garbage. Michigan will never win with him. And then the next week they're like, every NFL team would be excited to have him as head coach. So I'm like, what are you talking about? And it's the same guys putting stuff out. I did see that one of the football insiders for the NFL said that it'd be highly unlikely for him to leave Michigan at this point. I think he was kind of hoping for the Raiders. And now with them making the playoffs, like I said earlier in the show, I think it makes sense for them to stick with their coach. You don't want to bring in Harbaugh at this point, I don't think. I mean, maybe it would be a good fit. But I think of all the teams that were interested in him, they're the only ones that kind of make sense that have like a higher ceiling right now. Bears, I think you'd be crazy to go there. They're a mess. What other teams have mentioned him? Even Minnesota, maybe, but it's like, all right, well, what are you doing? Indianapolis, maybe. They were close to the playoffs, but then you have Carson Wentz. I think the Raiders were the most attractive. And I just don't think that at this point you make that run. Plus, if you're him, look at college football. They've been talking about like the NIL and stuff and how close really is Michigan. They were a quarterback away this year, and it looks like their quarterback that was a freshman could have that playmaking ability to move the ball on a Georgia defense. He's going to be most likely the starter next year. Barring injury, why would you not take a run at it and maybe wait for a team that's a little bit more stable to come open? Like if I were him, prove it's not a fluke, beat Ohio State again, and then maybe you can have your pick of teams, Because like how many other teams that were right there, like the Cowboys that were looking for a coach, they settled for McCarthy, right? They would have killed to have Harbaugh a few years ago. Who knows? But I wanted to circle back around on that. Now there's a little bit more clarity which teams are after him. The Dolphins said they weren't interested. They fired their coach, which now the Bears, I think they are interested in him. Maybe that's the right move. I think in the NFL, you got to be careful because your quarterback means a lot. Like, look at Arians. Is people people consider him a great coach? Like, no. Would he win a Super Bowl without Tom Brady? Hell no. They weren't even making playoffs. So I think if you're going to try to make that jump back to college or back to the NFL from college, I think you got to have a clear quarterback picture, right? Maybe the Broncos. What do you think?
I mean, I had said before, I thought if he was going to make the jump, the Raiders and the Vikings were two of the teams that I thought made sense because they both were in that mold that he seems to prefer. Strong running game, like play a more physical run style of offense, set up your play action passes, and he's not one that he wants to get into a lot of these spread sets and just throw it around. Like he's shown time and time again he prefers those personnel groupings and the heavier packages and grinding the clock out. I mean he did some of that when he was with the Niners and was really successful in Stanford with it. I think that plays to his strength. I don't know why you would go to a situation like the Giants, like Chicago, where unless you really think that you have the pieces there to make a run. It's like if you're starting from square one, with a lot of those. I think like there are so many issues that you need to contend with that what attracts somebody there, and unless you know going in that the owners are going to work with you and then give you several years to acquire the parts that you think you need to be successful.
Well, did you see the Raiders said that they were interested in even trading for Mike Tomlin? Like, that's the rumor. But then they made the playoffs, so it's kind of like, all right, well, and they even named Sean Payton as the other coach, the guy from the Saints. But it's like, all right, are they going to trade for another coach? Like, I know, wasn't the Bucs trade for John Gruden from them?
Yeah, from the Raiders.
Like, how many coaches are they going to be involved in trading?
They thought, hey, it worked for somebody else before. Maybe we'll just have it. We'll do it to our side this time. We'll just bring the coach in and.
Well, that would have been nice for Tomlin if they hadn't made the playoffs and the Raiders didn't either. For him just to get that invite, like go over to there. They don't have to rebuild without Ben. They get a trade out of it, so the Steelers fans aren't really that mad. But like bringing in Harbaugh, I think would have worked out for them. But now that they're in the playoffs, it's kind of like, is he going to string Michigan along? Like, do you want players that just played their heart out for a playoff coach to come in and then have a brand new thing come? Where now I think if they get a win or two in the playoffs, it's kind of like, all right, do you really want to restart? Because we're close with what Gruden built. Plus, you have to look at control too. Like some coaches, like, oh, the Lions will hire you. Yeah, of course they will. But like, what are you going to do right there? I don't know. But I just wanted to bring that up. That I've been watching it. I honestly don't have a feeling on it this year. Like if Harbaugh were to leave, not that I would be surprised. If he stays, I think that he has a chance now where you build on that season. And with NIL, I brought up Georgia finally broke the curse. They've been recruiting at the number one class for how many years now? Or like on that high level that they're on the same level as Ohio State and Alabama.
Well, you can say Florida State too because we have the number one transfer portal class right now.
I saw that. I looked that up because I didn't know that was a thing. I thought you were making that up. That's like a joke. But
it is a joke, but it's also for serious. We're just reeling in the transfer portal.
Well, the transfer portal, there wasn't that many guys. I was kind of surprised. I think Florida State was just number one based on the number of guys they took. And I thought that there might be like, because you hear all this stuff about transfer portal, guys in the transfer portal. I'm like, I'm expecting each team to have like 10 dudes coming in. And it wasn't like that at all. It was like most had one guy. So what about the guys that aren't getting picked up? They're just in the portal, giving up their scholarship, right?
Yes, that's 100% what it is. Like you go in, and there's not a guarantee. And I think it works both ways because on one hand, it also gives some of those schools the ability to move players or to adjust for the guys that are going to fit their systems better.
And so that's where I think going forward, a lot of this stuff is going to even out. So I've seen Georgia fans be like, all right, well, it's only going to get worse. Like, if you expand the playoffs, Georgia's going to be that much more dominant. It's like, look, Georgia has been recruiting that high. They haven't been that dominant. Like, I know they were close and should have won the national championship a couple years ago, but it's like every couple years. They're not on Clemson's level of run. They're not on Alabama's level of run. Maybe they will do it, but like, let's see, the quarterbacks that they've been bringing in haven't worked out. They won it with the guy they didn't even want to be their quarterback. He brought him in to run scrub team. So like maybe that's what I've noticed for like these other teams. And that's what I said about Harbaugh staying at Michigan. When you look like you have a quarterback that could be that guy, I think that's how you take that next step. Whether it's recruiting, I think as long as you have the blue chip ratio, which everyone knows there's like a handful of teams that do, you're perfect. Game manager quarterbacks, great. But you kind of need that guy that's able to just take some hits, some weird fumbles. Like he had that fumble that shouldn't have been a fumble at all because he was like throwing the ball. I don't even know how they reviewed that. Did you see that play?
Yeah.
I'm like, I was so shocked. I'm like, all right, well, I guess they want Bama to win. And so it's like almost like, all right, he was in bounds, but like I thought they should have been looking to see if he was throwing the ball. Like it looked like he would have. It's not like he brought the ball back and the defender hit his arm. The defender never even touched his arm. So it was almost like he was throwing it and, okay, just call the intentional grounding and move past it. And they were so confused on the broadcast. I'm like, oh my gosh, this game's a mess. Which, of course, Matt, second lowest TV rating of all time. Last year's was worse, the Ohio State-Alabama beatdown. But that was a COVID year with no fans. So maybe that had something to do with it. People didn't really care last year. This year it should have bounced back, right? But I think they really screwed themselves by the matchups they picked because they were setting it up. They said, hey, we're going with the best team. People don't want to see the same teams. They just don't. So,
well,
like,
I think
eventually,
there's
ahead.
Also a scenario where it's an ongoing fight with why are they insisting on playing this stupid national championship game Monday night at 8 o'clock?
Yeah,
like,
but that's because that's the Monday Night Football slot. You know that's why they picked it.
There's no reason
they're never going to be
doing that.
They're never going to move it because they would have to compete with the NFL. Would you put it on Saturday?
Yes.
I mean, I guess maybe. They play the basketball national championship on Monday, though, too, don't they?
They do, and it's stupid.
Well, I'll say this. They keep saying about, like, oh, well, it's not going to even things out. I guarantee you, if Georgia had to come to the Big House this year in the freezing cold, that game wouldn't have been what it turned out to be. Right? I mean, come on. Even the embarrassing thing was, last night it didn't even look like the stadium was full. That Indianapolis stadium isn't that big, from what I remember, right? The Big Ten constantly sells it out for the Big Ten championship game, and they knew it was there. And so the environment last night wasn't that good. The announcers kept saying, like, this is one of the craziest environments they've ever seen. I'm like, no, it wasn't even as electric as some of the Big Ten championship games I've seen. Like the Wisconsin Penn State one a few years ago. Like, give me a break. This game, it was very dull. I didn't think the crowd was electric at all. And like I said, when the camera panned out, it looked like there were large swatches that were just empty. Because maybe, like, if you're a Georgia fan, do you really want to see them lose to Bama again? Like, do you want to invest $1,000 in that? Probably not. If you're Bama going for yet another championship, do you even want to pay for it? Like, when your own fans don't want to pay for the game, people aren't going to watch either. And I mean, it still drew pretty well. But for a system that everyone's saying, like, got to stick with the status quo, they didn't want these other teams in. I just don't understand why they didn't look at it and say, we got to put Michigan against Cincinnati. We can do the rankings however we want. Get the rematch out of the way, and let's go ahead and because like I said, the result from Georgia and Alabama was similar anyway to Georgia-Michigan. There would have been literally no difference if Michigan had played Georgia in the national championship versus if they had played them in the first round like this year. Except you would have had better ratings, I think.
I think your ratings would have been better, too, had Oklahoma State won the Big
100%.
12 and qualified.
They really screwed them. But then Georgia wouldn't even have been in it.
Well, no, the thing is, they would have had Oklahoma State in, and it would have bumped. They would have kept Cincinnati out, and then they would have.
I don't think they would have kept Cincinnati out. They would have bumped Georgia out. Oh, hell yeah!
No, shut your mouth.
There was so much pressure this year. You're thinking out of it now after watching Cincinnati lose. There was so much pressure. Cincinnati was getting in no matter what. They couldn't leave them out while they're negotiating why they can't expand the playoffs. They used that this year. They put them up against Bama so that they could use that as an example and say, like, look, another blowout. That's why we can't expand it. You know they put them up as Alabama as an example. They could have went for the better ratings, but I guarantee they thought Bama has the best chance to blow them out. Let's do that. Because they couldn't put Georgia up against them because that would have just been crazy. I mean, actually, they could have. They could have had Georgia at 3, but then they would have had to put, Michigan at 4? Or I guess they could have had Michigan at 1, Cincinnati at 2. No, that wouldn't have worked either. Like, I don't know how they would have been able to get around that to get them to play Georgia after Georgia lost. But I honestly think if Georgia would have won, Georgia would have played Cincinnati no matter what, just so that they probably would have thought, oh, they're going to kill them. Oklahoma State would have jumped them and played Michigan. And then that would have been the perfect matchup. Michigan, Georgia in the national championship, Georgia still would have won the championship anyway. Like, what's the difference? It just might have been a little bit closer being full of Wolverine fans there in Indianapolis. But next year, we'll see. I still think Georgia got lucky with the quarterback play. We saw LSU do it. The only team that's consistently in the playoffs, no matter what, has been Alabama. Every other team that won the national championship had to get a quarterback that got hot. Ohio State with Cardale Jones. Joe Burrow, LSU. Stetson this year with Georgia. Stetson Bennett, right? And then who else? Clemson with their two guys, Trevor Lawrence and was it Taj Boyd? Who was the first one? Was it Deshaun Watson?
Deshaun Watson.
Yeah. So, I mean, you have two NFL guys. Basically, Taj Boyd, did he even get to the playoffs? I don't even know. But
no, he got destroyed by West Virginia.
Well, that's what you need. You need a quarterback that can take you to that next level. Otherwise, it's just Bama. Right? They're the only consistent team that has been stacked up. But I have been watching, I saw an interesting breakdown. That's probably the last thing I'm going to bring up on the show. In terms of like NIL, Alabama's been feeding off a lot of West Coast kids that gives them the depth that really puts them over the top. Normally, those West Coast kids kind of get split up between USC and the Pac-12, and then the rest trickle out to the Midwest. Like, you have guys like Tom Brady go to Michigan, guys go to Ohio State or Notre Dame, because they played out West in the Rose Bowl. Alabama's been feeding off that, and I think that's been giving them the extra boost right now over other teams. So, like, guys like Najee Harris that were down between Alabama and Michigan, in the past, he would have went to Michigan. I think he had a room at Michigan. Nope, never mind. And like USC isn't even involved in these kids anymore. This year they got one over Michigan and Alabama. The cornerback, I think Jackson was his name. USC, whenever they got Lincoln Riley, he was able to keep him. And so I wonder if USC is able to keep some of those five-star guys from going to Alabama. Because like I bring up Michigan, that's just the recruiting battle. That's how I know the guys' names. If Michigan wasn't even involved in it, Alabama shouldn't be involved, you know? It should be between Michigan and USC and Notre Dame like in the 90s. Not so much of Alabama trying to get these extra kids that would never have gone there 2 decades ago till the SEC hype happened. So I think if USC can come back with Lincoln Riley, not winning a national championship, just keeping the local kids, or if Chip Kelly can get it done at UCLA and maybe Oregon can try to keep some of those kids because they were stealing them for a while. And that's when they were in the playoffs. And Chip Kelly was having his run. They were taking all those California kids. They kind of stopped, and Alabama's been feeding them, and then they've been unstoppable since. Cut that pipeline off. I've seen a lot of people call out Miami and Florida State too because they lost their pipelines, and now Georgia and Clemson are feeding them. And if they were able to keep those kids at home, and you can also blame Texas, although A&M's kind of stepping up in that regard, right? You only need one team from Texas to steal them from Alabama. And then I think you'll see a shift where if Texas can jump in there, you get the Florida schools back, and they're starting to steal top recruits. You can't live in the transfer portal. That might work for a year. Look at Michigan State, but they were able to put that into their highest rating class, I think, of all time this year with Mel Tucker. So I'm waiting to see how they do. But I think you got to rebalance that talent. The best way to rebalance it, expand the playoffs and let the Pac-12 have a team in the playoffs every year. You know, they're barely in it. Kids don't want to play when they don't have a chance at the playoffs. Where I think if USC was in it every year or two, every year, then those kids would want to go there. That's kind of how it's been for Georgia, where they're able to sell hope. There's been no hope in the Pac-12. None at all. You had it with Washington and Chris Peterson, but he got burnt out, and there's been no hope since. Right? Every year, Clay Helton was getting fired.
Yeah.
If you're a kid, you're not going to be like, hey, you know what? I'm just going to eliminate them, and it's going to be between Harbaugh, selling hope, and Nick Saban, but let's be honest, I'm just going to go to Alabama. Right? Now, with Harbaugh winning the Big Ten, will that kind of shift it out? Notre Dame has a new coach selling hope, though, now. Brian Kelly at LSU. How do we know he doesn't have those connections still? Where he's going to come in and try to do the same thing. But I just think we need to balance it out more. And to do that, you got to have an even amount of teams in the playoffs. I don't like the bye week. I've said it all along. Michigan didn't deserve a bye this year. Alabama and Georgia sure didn't deserve a bye this year. So why would you give them one? And Cincinnati would have been ripped off. I said they were guaranteed to make it this year. If it was a bye, Cincinnati would have ended up the 5 seed this year, no matter what. Notre Dame would have got that bye. I guarantee it, right? Or no, I guess they were eliminated, right? Because isn't there a weird cause where if they're not in a conference, they can't get the bye? That was one of the proposals anyway. So it would have been Baylor. It'd have been like, they would have not picked Cincinnati for the bye. And they would have been like, well, you're happy just to be in the playoffs. And then if they would have lost, everyone would have been like, see, we told you. We told you we didn't mean to match up with Georgia, but that's just how the cards fell. Just be glad you were there, Matt. And so I think you'll see the rankings even be more BS if that happens. But that's all I had. I mean, Georgia winning a national championship, not a big deal. They won one in the 80s. So it's not like they're a first-time winner. Show me Ole Miss winning one, and then I'd be surprised. Like, I can't remember. Like, if they have a national championship, it's from, like, pre-1950, right? So, like, or Mississippi State with Mike Leach, if you're going to talk about the SEC's dominance, not one of the top 3 most talented teams in the entire country. Like, it's shocking that Ohio State has only won 2 in my lifetime because of how much they've been dominating the recruiting rankings. Like, I think if you're an Ohio State fan, like I said, going into the playoffs this year, you have to be a little nervous that Michigan is one lucky run away from tying the national championship total in your lifetime after Ohio State's been so dominant for 20 years, right? I mean, how could you not be? So maybe they're the ones starting all the rumors, Matt.
Maybe that's it.
But the NIL, I think that's the equalizer. I mean, Georgia and Alabama and even Jimbo Fisher has basically said, oh, yeah, we've been paying kids no matter what. Now it's just legal. So you can't be paying them any more than what you were before. So I think in like 2 or 3 years after teams get caught up, I think the talent will start to be more spread out.
Well, I do think like the NILs are going to they're going to create this haves and have-not system. Because where you have someone like Texas A&M that
Matt, it only takes one. Charlie Batch is going to pay. We're going to pay Williams, the quarterback from Oklahoma, $1 million to transfer to Eastern Michigan. All it takes is one player.
Well, right.
To ruin your depth. Right? Because now they're not going to have 3 5-star quarterbacks. You're going to have one. And if that guy gets injured, like remember Colt McCoy going down in the national championship game? Mac Brown was an injury away from having 2 national championships, right?
Yeah.
So that started the dynasty. Blame him. Blame Mac Brown for not recruiting another quarterback.
Well, I don't blame that, but I think when you look at, like, to me, there's less of an issue with the transfer portal where if your coach leaves, like if you commit to Michigan and then Harbaugh goes to the NFL and you're like, well, I don't want to play for, they bring in some spread guy. Like, my skill set doesn't match spread; it matches his pro style system. Why should you be a round peg in a square hole, be able to go?
Well,
and
talk about coaching searches. The rumor was that Harbaugh was telling these guys. Remember, he signed a top 10 class. So imagine him telling people, "Hey, yeah, come sign with Michigan, but I'm thinking about going to the NFL." That was the rumor.
Well, and that, I mean, honestly, that makes sense because you have a lot of these coaches that are saying, realistically, if your position coach or your coordinator's doing their job, you're not going to be there. Like, they're not going to be there your entire time. They're going to move on from a position coach to a coordinator, from a coordinator to a coach, to a head coach. Like, you're going to progress if you're demonstrating that you're growing and being able to produce.
And that's where if I look at it and I see that and a player comes in and says, like, I'm going to commit to the school because I think you are going to go to the NFL and you're the next coach. Like, if Michigan reaches out to you and you're like, look, we just were in the playoffs and we you signed a top 10 class of kids that know that Harbaugh was going to go to the NFL because he told them while he was recruiting them. So you don't have to worry about transfers or like whatever. Because like remember the mess Mel Tucker had to deal with that first year getting hired late. Because D'Antonio just like remember he just retired like before signing day or after signing day. It's like, all right, well if Harbaugh ended up doing that because the Raiders lose like that round and they do fire their coach, like I think if Harbaugh honestly said that and the players knew that he might leave, like if you're a guy like Luke Fickell, why would you not make that jump? Which would be the one coach that I think that they would hire or should hire at that point. Like, right? You got to be like, hey, we're going to call you. You're in Cincinnati. You could go live in the Big 12, or we already have a system in place. Ohio State hasn't hired you, so we know you probably secretly hate them and want to beat them and prove your worth. Go for it. Right? I mean,
makes sense.
They honestly haven't been considering him for real in any of their job openings. But who knows? He's supposed to be wanting to stay at Cincinnati. Maybe you can get Matt Campbell for the same thing. I think that'd be less hype. But like if you're able to dangle the recruiting rankings and say like, look at the guys we have, they're all in for Michigan. I think that's a hard, not a hard sell for a lot of coaches to just look at that and say, let's just get in here and hit the ground running. But I don't know. Maybe anything else for college?
No.
All right, I'm sure we won't even be bringing it up that much unless coaching changes happen. But I think things are kind of settled down. Championship game's over. Not a big surprise. Not really a snooze fest either, but the end of the game is kind of over. So we'll see. I just want to see a team like Pitt have a chance to get in. I did have the final 10 to complete. Of course, Georgia's won. They had Bama at 2, Michigan 3. Cincinnati finished 4th. Baylor was that 5th team. Ohio State, Oklahoma State, Notre Dame, and Michigan State, Oklahoma. Pitt comes in at 13th. And it's like, all right, they were the highest ACC team, I believe. But in terms of like, yeah, they're right ahead of Clemson by 1 spot. But in terms of like next year coming in, does Pitt have a good shot at going to a back-to-back ACC championship games? I don't know. I don't have a feeling on that. You almost got to see how the portal goes, like you said, Matt. And you still got to stop Clemson. Clemson can't be rolling out with an inept offense again, right? They're bringing in all new coordinators. How much did Venables actually do on defense?
A lot.
I don't have anything for the final bell. Do you have anything?
Want to give a shout out to the Bison. Won their 9th national championship, beat Montana State on Saturday afternoon when college football is supposed to be played, and was a great game. Montana State's quarterback got injured early, which kind of put a little bit of damper on it, but I like the culture and the system that the Bison have in place, that they've been through 3 different coaches now, and they still continue to rock the similar style offense and run the ball down people's faces.
Aren't they the Bison? How are you pronouncing it like that? Say that again.
I said Bison.
Yeah, like M. Bison from like Street Fighter?
Yeah.
Is that his
exactly.
name?
It's aggressive. It's a North Dakota thing. You wouldn't understand it.
I wouldn't understand it.
Those cold Midwest states.
Hey, I know the cold baby.
You don't know anything about it.
You have anything else?
No, that's it.
All right. Thanks for listening. Got some big playoff stuff coming up. So tell your friends, and hopefully we'll see Big Ben come out with a bang and not with a whimper. I mean, at least get one more playoff win, right? One? I don't know, though. Andy Reid, has he exercised his demons? Because the Chiefs, 2 years ago, everyone said Chiefs have a dynasty going. They have to win a couple more championships to have a dynasty. So we'll see. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.